Two winter storms will be coming to the United States over the next week, and these will bring the threat for snowfall, freezing rain that'll lead to ice, and even a potential for some severe weather. In addition to that, a monster heat wave continues across much of the United States with record-breaking high temperatures that are going to continue all the way through the end of this week, but we are eventually expecting an Arctic blast around the middle of February that could bring some of the coldest weather that we've seen all winter long. So in today's forecast, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather that'll be impacting the United States over the next couple of weeks. And we'll begin with what's happening across the country today. And we have a huge atmospheric river event that's happening back along the west coast of the United States. And this is dumping tons of snow and rain to areas like California, Oregon, and as well as Washington. And this is what's going to be fueling a lot of our different storm systems that are going to be impacting areas east of the Rocky Mountains over the next couple of weeks. We are actually expecting at least one of these winter storms that are going to be happening over the next few days to actually come from this energy. It's all going to be moving here into the Midwest and eventually through the Ohio Valley and Northeast, bringing the potential for snow, freezing rain, and perhaps even a rare severe weather event. And elsewhere, we are dealing with much quieter weather, especially in the southern plains and the southeast. And by the way, record-breaking high temperatures are likely in many locations today all the way through Thursday across areas in the southern plains and the southeast. And many of these areas will break record-breaking high temperatures multiple days in a row. So this is a really big heat wave that's going to be happening here in the month of February. Now let's talk more about these winter storms that'll be coming to the United States over the next week, and we'll begin with what's happening here over the next few days. As we go throughout the day today into early tomorrow morning, we'll continue to have snow falling back over in the upper Midwest and also through Michigan. This is where we're only expecting a few inches of snow to come out of this little area of snowfall. Overall, not anything like a winter storm in these areas. Eventually, as we go into early Tuesday morning, this will be fizzling out as it moves into the Northeast with a little bit of snowfall left, and then eventually as we go throughout the day Tuesday and Wednesday, we are going to be dealing with a ton of snow and rain across the west coast from a powerful atmospheric river, which is essentially a very strong jet stream that's transporting tons of moisture into areas like the west coast, which by the way, this happens very frequently during the winter, so this is not rare by any means, but what is a bit more rare is that we'll have the potential for up to 150 inches of snow between a couple of days ago all the way through the end of this week in areas like the Sierra Nevada, so that's pretty crazy stuff. Obviously, that is much higher elevations. We're not really talking about at ground level, but that is still a lot of snow nonetheless. And then eventually, as we go into Wednesday, that is when we're expecting the beginning of a winter storm to form back over in the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, and also back into the Northeast. And this will begin as a relatively light area of precipitation, which includes rain as well as freezing rain, which will lead to ice accumulation, and as well as snowfall as we go into the early afternoon on Wednesday. Eventually, by the evening, that freezing rain is going to stretch out from Iowa and Missouri all the way back through areas like Virginia and Ohio. I do want to point out that I do think there could even be some freezing rain and snow that starts to fill in a bit further to the north than what the GFS model is showing right now. I think there will be a bit more moisture that fills into this area, which will increase the amount of snow and freezing rain that we're seeing, but keep in mind, it should stay light throughout most of Wednesday. Eventually into the overnight hours, Wednesday into early Thursday morning, we have a batch of snow moving through the upper Midwest, freezing rain filling in across many areas in the Ohio Valley and back into Virginia, and then we'll also have even a little bit of sleet falling in areas like southern Wisconsin. Eventually, by the early morning hours on Thursday, the heaviest of the snowfall is expected to stay in areas like the upper Midwest and Michigan, but eventually, as we go through Thursday morning, that snow will fill into areas like the Northeast, including New England. Freezing rain will continue, leading to ice back over in Pennsylvania, Virginia, and northern Ohio, and then eventually throughout the daytime hours on Thursday, heavy snowfall will be falling in New England, where we are expecting the majority of the snowfall to come out of this winter storm. So elsewhere, we're talking mostly about freezing rain that'll lead to ice. I do want to point out that we do think there's a chance on Wednesday and Thursday of some severe weather back over in areas like the lower Midwest and as well as the lower Ohio Valley. Keep that in mind. Damaging winds, maybe even an isolated tornado being a possibility. We'll talk more about that here in just a moment, though. And eventually, as we go into Friday into Saturday, things quiet down briefly, but I think we're going to have another winter storm right behind this one, which is going to come from that energy out of the atmospheric river event. We should eventually see some more snow and freezing rain in basically the same areas as we go into Saturday and as well as into Sunday. Now, keep in mind that this is about 6 to 7 days from now, so things could change, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and we'll keep you posted with the latest on this next winter storm as well. Now, if we go really long term here, I do think we're going to see even more snow and as well as freezing rain, and I think it'll end up being even further down to the south as we get closer to the middle of February. The time frame I'm really watching right now is February 11th to February 16th. Now, I know that's a long time from now. I know There's a lot of things that could change between now and then. However, we've been pretty accurate so far this season when it comes to long-term forecasting of this type of stuff. I'm not saying this exact area will see snowfall by any means, but I do think we're going to see more snow, and I think it's going to be a bit further down to the south, especially if we end up getting a huge Arctic blast, which I think the odds of that are at least increasing right now, that'll be happening around the middle of February. And for comparison with these two different winter storms, this is what the European model is showing right now, which I think has a better grip of what we can expect in terms of freezing rain and snow. It does show a much larger area covered in freezing drizzle or freezing rain across areas in the Midwest, including Iowa and also into the northern Ohio Valley. Snow is far off to the north in the northern plains in the upper Midwest Wednesday night. By Thursday morning, it actually has some light, moderate, and even at times heavy freezing rain back over in the Northeast and as well as Michigan. So definitely expect at least some areas of ice back over in the Northeast and as well as Michigan as we go into Thursday morning. That could cause some really slick spots on the roadways. But one key difference between the GFS model, which is what I just showed you, and the European model is that it shows snow falling for a lesser amount of time in New England, which would lead to lower amounts of snowfall accumulation. So two big differences between these two computer models. Again, as we get closer, we'll keep you posted with the latest on details about how much snow is going to fall. With that said, early indications are that we'll likely at least have 4 to 8 inches of snow in many areas in northern New England. Now, we are expecting a decent amount of ice accumulation out of this particular winter storm event. We are actually going to have a large area, I think, between 1/100 of an inch of ice, which is obviously not much, but it can cause some slick spots, all the way up closer to 1/2 inch of ice will be possible in areas like southern Michigan and even back into parts of northern Indiana and northern Illinois. And if this ends up happening, power outages are definitely going to be a possibility. So we need to be watching this very closely. I know this isn't a full-blown winter storm when it comes to snowfall, at least in these areas, but the ice is definitely going to be a concern, especially when it comes to power outages. The GFS model does have this a bit further down to the south and east right now, so again, there is a little bit of a difference here between these two computer models with exactly where the heaviest snow falls and also where the heaviest of this freezing rain falls as well. And here's an early indication of how much snow we can potentially see out of this winter storm as we go into Thursday. Northern New England and as well as upstate New York, probably going to see around 4 to 8 inches of snow in most areas. This is a bit more of the wild card. It's going to depend on how fast we transition from snow to freezing rain. Assuming that the transition takes quite a bit, these numbers will probably be higher than around 3 to 6 inches of snow. It'll likely be lower if that transition happens much faster in the Northeast. But overall, not expecting a whole lot of snow again back over in Virginia or Maryland. If anything, it's mostly going to be freezing rain, which leads to ice accumulation. And in terms of that severe weather, as we go into Wednesday and Thursday, there will be instability that comes here out of the Gulf of Mexico and rises into areas like the Ohio Valley and the Midwest. This is very rare in the month of February to have any sort of setup for severe weather in the Ohio Valley, but there is a chance Wednesday night into Thursday morning that we could get enough instability and as well as maybe even enough wind shear to the chance that we could actually see some large hail damaging winds and maybe an isolated tornado or two back over in the Ohio Valley and Midwest. I'm not overly confident that this is going to be anything like an outbreak. I don't think that's the case here. I think this is like a marginal risk type day. However, there is definitely going to be a chance here for severe weather. Definitely going to be something to watch for. Again, we're going to have more detailed updates in our next couple of videos talking more about that. Here's the European ensembles as we go into the middle of February. So in terms of how much snow that we might see, again, the European ensembles are pretty confident that snowfall accumulation will begin to increase as we get closer to the middle of February in the Central Plains, the Midwest, and even into the Northeast. That's where we currently think the most significant amount of snowfall will fall here over the next couple of weeks. But definitely don't let your guard down if you're back over even in the Ohio Valley or even back into the Southern Plains. I do think a chance for snow will exist in the middle of February, especially if we do end up seeing that huge Arctic blast. Here's what we're currently looking at in terms of the probabilities of seeing greater than 1 inch of snowfall all the way through the middle of February. And if you're in the dark red, you're almost guaranteed to at least see an inch of snowfall. Areas that are in the oranges or yellows, you at least have a 50 to 80% chance of seeing 1 inch of snowfall. So Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, you're probably going to see some snowfall here over the next couple of weeks. But the wild card area is really back through areas in like Oklahoma, Texas, and even back into Tennessee and the Carolinas. That's where we don't exactly know if there's going to be snowfall here over the next couple of weeks. But again, if we get an Arctic blast, I think the chances of us seeing snow further down to the south are definitely going to be a bit more elevated. And here are the probabilities of seeing greater than 3 inches of snowfall, which would be a little bit closer to winter storm criteria in some areas, not really the Midwest or the Northeast. However, many areas in the Northeast currently expected to have around a 100% chance here of seeing greater than 3 inches of snowfall over the next couple of weeks. The upper Midwest in the same boat. And then again, the questions do remain really across the Midwest and the Central Plains. Despite there being, again, some freezing rain, which will lead to ice in a lot of these areas, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be seeing 3 inches or more of snowfall, but the chances there are around 50% right now. Over the next few days, we are expecting a heat wave to continue across the southern plains and the southeast, in addition to record-breaking high temperatures. Most of those will happen either today or Thursday, as heat will continue to dominate across the southern plains and then back through the east coast. Eventually, as we go into the weekend, that heat just continues across the Ohio Valley and the southeast before eventually colder weather will start to return as we go into early next week. And then eventually around the middle of February, there's been a lot of chatter on if we are going to see a huge Arctic blast in the United States. And as of right now, the GFS model has backtracked just a little bit on any sort of Arctic blast happening. It actually has a lot of that cold air sitting back up here in Canada right around February 15th. And keep in mind, this is about 2 weeks from now, so things are definitely going to change to the forecast. For comparison, this is what the GFS model showed on the run from yesterday, and it does show a much more intense Arctic blast. So we don't exactly know if this is going to happen yet, but make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and we'll keep you posted with the latest on what exactly happens here over the next few days. If there are any major changes to the forecast, we'll be the first to let you know.